Oh, I'm gonna be out of practice for this. Hello, welcome. You may not recognize me. I haven't been... Oh, I should fix... No, actually I should leave the light like that. Oh, I haven't made a video since like January, and even though I uploaded some in I think I uploaded one in like April, really late, but recently, this week, I have gotten some burdens lifted off my life, and I feel like my life is just gonna come together much better. And so the first thing I was like, oh, I want to make some booktube videos. I want to get back to booktube. I want to get back in the community. We'll see how that goes. I wanted to just quickly talk about some books that I read in October. It wasn't a lot. And then books that I want to read in November. I never used to make TBRs because I never stick with anything, but I have a certain specific reason for reading certain books in November, and it just seems like a good time. Alright, so yeah, I'm combining this because I just have 3 books to talk about for October. What month is it? In September and October, I listened to a lot of like paramedic and EMS memoir audiobooks. So I listened to 3 of them in October. I'm not really going to go into talking about them. If you're interested, you can ask me about them in the comments or go to my Goodreads and they're on there. I just don't think that anyone really cares here, do you? But I'm currently doing my prerequisites to apply to paramedic school, so I've been into that a lot lately and listening to those audiobooks. But it's, like I said, I don't think you guys care. If you do, I'd love to chat about it. But anyway, other than those 3 audiobooks that I listened to in October, I also read Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Gailey, which is just a little novella. Essentially, it's this like Western thing that follows, I don't even remember what the main character's name is, Esther, and she stows away in this wagon of these librarians because she's running away from her town because her father is trying to marry her off to some guy, and she's gay, and her girlfriend just got hanged. And so she stows away in the wagon of these librarians, and they're librarians, but actually with this association they're a group of women who travel around and basically smuggle things, and basically smuggle people here and there. And so Esther stows away with them and is off into the desert. Just a bunch of badass lesbians and non-binary folks. That's what I should say. It's not just an organization of women. It's mostly women and some other individuals who don't identify as women. The abysmal video that I'm making. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by Victoria Schwab, V.E. Schwab. I love V.E. Schwab. It's about our main character, Addie LaRue. I know, who would have thought. And she is born in 1600s France, and she is in her 20s, and so her family's really trying to marry her off. And she doesn't want to get married off, so she makes a deal with the devil, and he kind of twists it, like, so she kind of wanted to, I don't remember what the wording of her actual deal was. She essentially wanted to be free and to live 1,000 lives or whatever. I don't remember. But as the devil would do, he would twist it, and so basically he dooms her to be, to live forever, but to be forgotten by everyone she meets. So we kind of go back and forth in timelines, and so we start with her, like we have her in 1600s France and throughout history at different historical events and meeting different people of history who are quite famous today, and also in the 21st century. We kind of go back and forth. So she lives a pretty lonely life. The devil keeps trying to get her to break and to surrender to him and to give up her soul. But she is just determined to never give in. And basically, that's how it goes. Every year, they meet up. He tries to get her to break, and she doesn't. Until one day, she's in a bookstore in New York City, and she steals a book. And she goes back the next day to try to resell it back to them because she's like, they won't remember me. They don't remember I was here and got caught stealing. And the bookseller remembers her. Going into this book, I really thought it was either going to end happy or sad. And it didn't really go either way. And I don't want to spoil. It's a long and slow and quiet and haunting novel. Like, it's not action-packed superhero things. It's not like life and death on the line. It kind of is, but I mean, it's not a loud, crazy, exciting novel. It's kind of, I don't know, it's beautifully quiet and simple and yet complicated. I'm not a huge lover of historical fiction, but I really enjoyed the historical elements in this. I feel like I just V.E. Schwab can't do any wrong in my book. This is not your typical, you know, V.E. Schwab, like crazy dystopian superheroes, supervillains, or like fantasy, what she's really known for. This is something else. But I loved it, so it's like just proof that she can really do anything, right? Lastly, at the very end of October, I was like, okay, October's over. I had like all these thrillers and like witchy books and horror that I wanted to read, and I really didn't get to any of it. So I'm like, I gotta get to one of them. So I read I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Anne Reid. I listened to the audiobook on Halloween. I didn't rate this book. I don't really know what to think. When I finished the book, did I understand what I had read? Absolutely not. I dove deep into the internet and into reviews and discussions of people talking about this book and trying to figure out what it meant and what actually had happened, because what is happening on the page is not what is actually happening in the reality of the story. I wonder if there are videos of the author talking about it and what he intended and like what he means, because I'm still confused. I think I figured out what was going on. I don't know how I'm feeling these days about mental health and mental illness being plot devices or being like the entire plot of a story in thrillers and horror books. We saw that in The Wives by Taryn Fisher. I don't feel like mental illness should be a plot device. I don't know, and I still don't know if that's exactly what happened here, but I'm just like, I'm so confused. I'm gonna stop talking about it because it just hurts my brain. Moving on, let's talk about my my November TBR. Like I said, I don't make TBRs because I just want to read what I want when I want, and I never ever get to as many books as I would like to. But for November, because it's IndigAthon, I do have kind of a set list of books that I really need to get to. Basically, most of this is my IndigAthon TBR, but there's a few other things. So IndigAthon is a readathon happening for the entire month of November, celebrating books by Indigenous authors, as it is Native American Heritage Month in the US. I'm Canadian. Our Indigenous Heritage Month is in June, but I figured I would participate because I have a little stack of books by Indigenous authors, both American and Canadian, that I've been piling up and need to get to. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna participate, why not? But I have a couple other books I'm gonna talk about quickly before those that I want to read in November. So the first one is one that I actually already finished, One by One by Ruth Ware. This is her newest book. This will be the third read from her that I've read. I've read The Turn of the Key and The Death of Mrs. Westaway, both of which were okay. I didn't necessarily love either one, so we'll see. We won't see because I already read it. But anyway, this is about this app development team. This group of people who run this app called Snoop, which is like a music app where you can snoop on what other people are listening to in real time. And they go on this retreat or this business trip or whatever to this ski lodge in the Alps, the French Alps, and people start dropping like flies, man. And that's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna tell you how I felt about it because I will talk about it in my November wrap-up. The book that I'm currently reading, I just started it. I'm only like 20 pages in. It's The Space Between Worlds by, I don't know how to say this, is it Micah or Micaiah Johnson? I should have looked that up before. I feel like sci-fi is coming into its moment. I'm seeing more and more sci-fi books being released and getting popular, and like sci-fi book adaptations, you know, to movies or whatever. Like dystopian was having its big moment back when I started booktube, and And then fantasy has been having its moment for the few years, but I think sci-fi's next. So this one I hadn't even heard of until probably last week when I saw it on Goodreads and marked it as to read. And then I was in a bookstore a few days ago, and this one, it was taller than all the rest of the books on the shelf, so it kind of stood out to me. So I just picked it up and I'm like, hey, I recognize this cover as something I just marked on Goodreads because I just found out about it. It follows our main character Kara, who is a traverser, and so she can travel between alternate dimensions, basically. In this world there is a multiverse, and the people on this planet which is Planet Zero, have figured out how to travel between worlds. It took them a long time, it took a lot of deaths, because they slowly figured out that if you hadn't already died on a planet, you couldn't travel there. That universe would kick you out and most likely kill you. Like, it would just spit you back out when you tried to travel. What do they call it? Hopping? Jumping? So our main character, Kara, can travel to 372, I think it is. 372 worlds in total, because her alternate selves are really good at dying. She grew up in the slums, and so what they figured out is that these people, more poor people growing up outside of these big walled cities, growing up very poor, they're more likely to be able to travel to more worlds because they have way more chance of dying in all these other worlds because of just the circumstances of their lives. And so these really rich people, these elite people, they're very upset, very jealous because they're born with a silver spoon in their mouth in all of the worlds. They can't travel to many of them because they just live. Kara gets a new file, which means she has a new planet that she can go to, meaning that another one of herself is dead, and there are only 7 more out there. She unravels a mysterious secret or something in this new world that she can travel to. It sounds really cool, right? It sounds really cool, and I'm really excited for it. Okay, so I have a little stack of 6 other books. Now for IndigAthon, I'm not doing any of the bingo or the challenges or the group book or anything like that because I don't have my life that organized, but I am going to try to read just as many of this stack of Indigenous books as I can. I bought it when it first came out last year and I still haven't read it, and that's Highway of Tears by Jessica McDermott. So this is not by an Indigenous author actually, but it is about the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls in Canada and the Highway of Tears up north in northern BC, where a lot of murdered Indigenous people are found. The next book, I started listening to the audiobook for this the other day, but I kind of quit because I don't know. We'll see if I can keep going with it, or if I might need to read it physically, like that's gonna happen. It's The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Yeah, this is a horror type book, horror thriller, whatever, following 4 native men. Something disturbing happened with an animal or with a hunting trip or something, and now they're being hunted by an entity. I've heard some Indigenous reviewers, like Birdie, say that this book is not necessarily for non-Indigenous people. It's not necessarily geared towards them, and it's not necessarily, we won't necessarily be able to understand and appreciate a lot of the aspects of this book. So I understand that, and I want to read it as respectfully and as open-mindedly as I can. I've heard it has a lot of good reviews, and I'm excited for it. I'm going to try and get back to the audiobook. Then I have A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott. This is another Canadian kind of non-fiction. Alicia Elliott is Tuscarora from the Six Nations of Grand River. So she is diving into what it's like to grow up Indigenous in Canada, I think. And I think this mixes some of her own experiences with commentary on like it says on the back, intergenerational trauma, gentrification, parenthood, sexual assault, poverty, mental illness, and race, and many other topics. So I've had my eye on this for a while, and I finally picked it up. It's gorgeous. Can we just take a moment? Son of a Trickster by Eden Robinson. Now, most of these, I will note, I know it's, this readathon is kind of for Native American Heritage Month, and most of the books that I have are by Canadian authors. That is just what I have. I'm going to try in the future to pick up more Native American authors as well. This is what I have for now. I have a couple other books that I want to pick up that I don't own yet this month. One that is by a Native American author, and I think the other one is maybe Canadian. But anyway, Eden Robinson is a pretty prolific writer in Canada. Finally this year, one of her books was on the Canada Reads competition, and it was this one. And this is a fiction story about a boy named Jared. He's a high school kid. He deals, I think, with one of his parents is an alcoholic, and he kind of is in charge of taking care of them. His grandmother says he isn't human, he's the son of a trickster, and the ravens have begun to speak to him. And that's about all I know about it. But it is like, I have had people tell me over and over and over again, Canadian booksellers in bookstores, to tell me to read this, so it's time. Then I have Birdie by Tracy Lindbergh. This one I started listening to on audio the other day as well. So I'm kind of, I was going back and forth between this one and The Only Good Indians. That follows our main character Birdie, who is Cree, and she moves from northern Alberta to Gibsons, BC, and to reconnect with family and to try and find home. And also because, she has a leftover teenage desire to meet Pat John, who's Jesse from the Beachcombers, which was a show that was filmed up in Gibsons area decades ago, I think, and I don't know anything about it. The last one that I have is The Break by Katerina Vermey, or Vermette, I'm not sure. This one doesn't have a ton of a synopsis. It says, Stella, a young Métis mother, looks out her window one evening, and sees someone in trouble on the break. The break is a stretch of barren field on an isolated strip of land outside her house. She calls the police to alert them of a possible crime. And that's the whole synopsis. It says that there are shifting narratives, and it goes back and forth from people who are connected. And it really doesn't have a lot of synopsis. So I don't know a lot about it, but I don't want to, because I feel like if a book intentionally kind of didn't give you much information, there's a reason for it. So that's the last one that I have physically. I want to mention quickly, there are two other books by Indigenous authors that I want to pick up that are newer releases that I haven't gotten my hands on yet, even though I might not get to all of these. I want to pick these books up when I'm in Kelowna, because there's way more books there where I live. There's just a couple little bookstores, so I'm going to go book hunting when I'm there. I want to get Elatsue by Darcy Little Badger. I don't know a ton about this book. I think it has to do, it's kind of a magical realism or fabulism, and I really don't know a lot about it, but Books and Lala has been talking about it lately, and the cover's beautiful. So, and the other one is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is another book that was not even on my radar. I've read her Trail of Lightning books, but I didn't even know she had a new book coming out until like last week, and it sounds good. I think it's sci-fi or fantasy, and I don't know much else about it. I really don't, but it sounds really good. I do remember hearing different synopses. I don't remember them well enough to repeat them back to you. Like I have looked into these books, even if I say I don't know what they're about. So that's it. That is my October-ish wrap-up and my November TBR. It's way ambitious, because the likelihood of me getting to 10 books is scarce. Come talk to me in the comments about these books if you have anything to discuss. That's it. Happy reading in November, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.